to another episode of Speak Now. We are back again. We have been pretty consistent going on so far. I'm just chilling here. I got some Dave's hot chicken that I just ate, eating the fries right now. So I'll be snacking on those bad boys um, throughout the show. We got a lot of stuff to talk about that we could talk about here. Um, Obviously, we got to get into Steelers, Matt Canada, and all that jazz. But before we get into that, I mean, I just want to hear your guys' thoughts about Darius Leonard, Shaquille Leonard getting released from the Colts. We didn't have that slated to talk about, but I'm a little curious to see what you guys think. So we can start with you, Eli, if you want to share some updates about how your week's been and talk about Leonard.
Yeah, I believe just 2 weeks ago when we said like who's a problem right now, I said Shaq Leonard. Um, I saw he was getting less time, even though he's been producing below his standards, but still at a obviously I do think it came down to his contract size where the Colts determined he didn't fit his contract amount. And they found Zaire Franklin to be better than him at the moment, so no reason to keep that. And he just cleared waivers today, so I'll find that interesting. I could see the team like a Bears overpaying, um, desperately, Poles desperately trying to keep his job this year. So that'll be interesting to play out. I think that'll play out after this week. But other than that, I saw the Tigers interested in Kenta Maeda apparently for MLB free agency. I think that's solely for the purpose of potentially getting Yamamoto to the Motown, because supposedly he just wants to play with a Japanese-born player. So that's an interesting development. So it seems I'm assuming after that came out, Kenta Maeda definitely has a higher market now. So that'll be interesting. But that was just something I saw today that took my eye a little bit.
Yeah, as far as the Shaq Leonard, yeah, I know he had some injuries going on, and I don't think he got claimed. You said he didn't get claimed, Eli?
No, he cleared waivers a couple hours ago.
Yeah, so I think whoever, if someone claimed him, they had to pay him 6.1 million. So I'm sure that was an issue. Plus, the time I saw him play, I forget it was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. He would play like 6 or 8 plays, and then he was kind of hobbling and whatnot. I mean, some of it was getting pulled. I mean, even to the city of Indianapolis, I believe after the release, he was giving out turkeys later in the day in the community. So, um, obviously still a good dude and everything. So, yeah, I mean, someone will make a play, but I don't know about getting him checked out and whatnot and what that's really going to translate to because he hasn't really been much of a contributor on the field for, almost 2 years now. So, um, I don't know that the Bears will do that. They got Edmonds and Edwards, and I think they have another guy as well. So I'm not sure what team, I'd have to be some sort of contender, and it'd be a rental for the rest of the year, and then see where he kind of has to prove it, and then go somewhere. So some contender will get him on the cheap. He'll play a small amount of time and contribute, kind of almost like a Dominican Sue or like a 38, 35 to 40-year-old guy would do, but much younger and with some question marks. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I heard potentially I think it was Eagles and Bills. I can't remember.
Cowboys, I saw.
Cowboys, that's what it was. Yeah, Eagles and Cowboys could be interested. Wouldn't be opposed to the Steelers. Obviously, looking into him and maybe acquiring him, that'd be nice. I know that they just got um, Miles Jack and Blake Martinez, so we're starting to get some
But
options there at middle linebacker. But
they
let's be
got
honest
Blake
here,
too.
huh?
They got Blake too.
Yeah, that just
Yeah,
happened like yesterday or something like
he he unretired after he got exposed for his Pokemon scandal, so he's
that.
fishing for money again.
Didn't the Raiders pick him up for a minute, or was that I
He
don't
was on the
no?
practice squad, so the
Okay,
Steelers were able to pick him up.
they poached him. Okay, gotcha.
Yep. So yeah,
Yeah,
both.
they need help, like you said, at linebacker. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and I wouldn't trust either one of Jack or Martinez at this point to be a solid contributor. So honestly, if you even for just a rental, you might as well just see what Shaq has left in the tank. It can't be any worse than Mark Robinson. But speaking of the Steelers, some big news coming out of the Steel City, man. We finally have been liberated from our chains of having to deal with the oppressor, Matt Canada, who has been keeping our offense down. Now Kenny Pickett is going to go from worst starting quarterback in the NFL to top 5 easily. Probably like top 1. Probably it's going to be in the GOAT conversation in the next couple of years. Just now that Matt Canada is gone, guys, I'm interested to hear your takes. And then obviously I'm excited. But yeah, I don't think it's going to result in too much change this year, but it is a nice trend going forward.
One
Yeah.
thing I'll add. Oh wait, you can start. You can start.
Okay. Yeah, no, it was interesting. They held on to him for so long. I saw something, the Steelers hadn't fired a coordinator or a coach since 1941, and the guy actually fired himself. So that was a interesting tidbit. But yeah, no, I mean, it'd be interesting. Kenny Pickett, 6 TDs in his last 10 games. I think like 2 in his last 7 games or something like that. And um, like you said, I don't know what it'll result in this year. Obviously, maybe some more Pickens, maybe some more Warren, things like that. We can get into that more. But no, it's interesting. The guys that took over were the quarterbacks coach and the running backs coach, I think Faulkner and Eddie Sullivan. So I don't know. I mean, one of the guys was obviously directly helping Pickett. So I don't know what that means for play calling if they would have been restricted by Canada, which I'm sure is probably partially the case. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Eli?
Well, from the day before when we were talking about it, I don't think I've ever seen Jonathan more distraught about his Steelers before. I think you and I were really trying to calm him down, saying it's going to be okay. And lo and behold, it might be okay. I definitely think um, a lot of people say I don't know how much control a coordinator has, but I feel like it was pretty clear he had a lot of control based off of the results that we saw. It was over his tenure, they haven't had a game over 400 yards. Well, like 53 games in the NFL have had since. So it's like, obviously there's issues. It's hard for me to say that this will solve Kenny Pickett's issues right away. Um, Obviously you have to see a sample size to see how Kenny Pickett plays without him because he's never played without Canada. Um, so I think it'll be interesting. I think they have to work to get Pickens more involved again. I think that's essential. And I think the tandem that you mentioned that'll be running the offense, I think they have to lean into Warren. Um, and I think getting Fryermuth back involved, I think Kenny Pickett, that'll really help him out. And I think just getting the guys open for Kenny Pickett. He has a decent weapons. So it's interesting to see where they'll go because they're still in the playoff race. So I guess Jonathan, what are your thoughts on it? I have faith, but it's tough.
Yeah.
I got one more
Oh,
thing to throw in there before Jonathan rants. Yeah, no, I know in previous episodes, Jonathan brought up, TJ Watt in the last 6 years and kind of not letting that, go away as far as the defense and having those big centerpieces. But to the point that Eli made, and I'm sure Jonathan will touch on this. I mean, as the last 3 playoff games the Steelers have been in, they've given up 135 points. They've scored, but just not been dynamic enough to keep up and things like that. So hopefully this is something that propels them to start to do that. And Tomlin's still a great coach. I mean, they had a poll out there that who would you most play for in the NFL, and it was Mike Tomlin was number 1. I think Dan Campbell is number 4. I think Mike McDaniel, and I forget the other coach that was in there. So it was like Ron Rivera or something like that. But so it was interesting. So anyway, yeah, just throwing that in there too. You got these huge centerpieces on defense, and you got 6 seasons and 3 playoff losses. Yeah, you're having winning seasons, but you're just kind of getting to that point where in previous years it was like the Cincinnati Bengals would be in that regard, whereas the 30 or 40 years before that the Steelers were winning playoff games consistently. So it's a little bit of a disturbing trend for, I would say, Steelers fan.
Yeah, there's a lot to touch on. I'll start with that. Um, I think for me, it's kind of I'm trying to remember the last few playoff games. Obviously, there's the ones of the Browns, which I think one thing about that is like that game just started off about as worse as you can start off. And I think that Steelers team definitely overachieved. Like they had no business, excuse me, being 12-4, obviously winning their first 11 straight. Um, and you had Roethlisberger again at the tail end of his career, where couldn't really do much at that point. So like I'm willing to excuse that one a little bit, just because it's like you have that one, and then you have the Chiefs one. Again, it's Roethlisberger at the tail end of his career both times, like kind of shot at that point. So willing to excuse those. Then if you go when you start going further back is when you start getting to where the defense was a little bit more sloppy. That's still like kind of Killer Bees era, so that they were more offensively potent, which I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think you definitely need to start seeing results. And I think this firing of Canada is should be a big indication for Steelers fans that ownership and Tomlin, they want to see results. I think one of the reasons, obviously, yeah, talking about our text thread from earlier this week, yeah, dude, I was completely on the whole train bandwagon of Steelers fans that were tweeting after the game where they're like, Steelers could lose out, like they like are actually in a really rough spot. Because I started looking at like the numbers and the underlying number, and you start thinking the underlying numbers. You hear Najee talking, obviously Deontay getting frustrated on the sideline. You have George that's been getting frustrated. It's like, okay, so what you have here, and I almost made a video for my Steelers podcast about has Mike Tomlin lost the locker room, because you have Najee that's pissed, you have Deontay that's pissed, George that's pissed. And that's not something that happens with the Steelers. Like you don't have like these players that are like checking out, that that aren't buying into what Tomlin's selling anymore. And I think there's a reason he had to fire Canada. Tomlin said that he's the one that made the call. I know that Gary Dulac from the Pittsburgh Post Gazette, like he tweeted out that it was Art Rooney that made the firing. I don't actually know. But I think this is big because like one of my reasons for despair is I did not see them getting rid of Canada. Like Steve said, this isn't something that they've done. Like the last time they did this was 41, and it was the guy that fired himself. So this isn't something as an organization the Steelers typically do. So they don't like to basically pay a coach to not coach. So they're like that to a fault. Obviously, Tomlin in the press conference talked about being an absorber and wanting to take the blame on himself, and not, he feels like this is kind of shifting blame to someone else. I think it's justly, because like something to keep in mind is like Tomlin is a defensive minded coach. Tomlin will call the plays on defense, but the OC basically always calls the plays on offense for the most part, unless like Tomlin has a little input there. But this isn't like Andy Reid calling the offense or something like that. So yeah, I think Canada had a big say over the offense. I think Sullivan and Faulkner together should be able to like start doing things that works. I think one of the biggest critiques of Canada, besides the fact that his stuff was predictable, is that he wasn't willing to learn from the rest of the NFL and do stuff that works, right? Like never saw a pass over the middle. It's like always to like the numbers, and it's like that's not how you're going to win football games. Super predictable, which just sucks. So I think what this does is I think it less saves Kenny Pickett, but it more so gives the Steelers a chance for like the last 7 games to really evaluate what do you have with Kenny. Like, is Kenny your guy going forward? Was it Canada that was holding him back? Because he did regress in his second year, and that's not something that you always see happening. So can Kenny build off what you saw in the first year, build off those fourth quarter drives that he has, and actually become a successful quarterback? Or is he the guy that we've been seeing where he struggles to even hit 200 yards. He can't make a decent read on the field. Like, what do you have in him going into next year? Because I think this firing shows you that the Steelers really do believe that they are a piece or two away from competing, or a year or two away from competing. It's Super Bowl bust for like the next couple of years, and whether Kenny or not is going to be that guy that's behind center for that. They want to find out sooner rather than later, so they can maybe go make a move this offseason. It's kind of what I'm gathering from all of this, because yeah, I mean, I'm sure Tomlin's sick of losing. Cam Hayward, I think I saw the statistic where Cam Hayward's only won like one playoff game in his entire career, which is crazy when you think about how long Cam Hayward's been here. Maybe that's not quite. Maybe it was like TJ Watt or someone's like only won like one playoff game, and it's like, oh, dude, that guy needs to. Maybe it was TJ.
TJ Watt's 0.
Huh?
TJ Watt is 0.
So I think it's like Cam Hayward that only has like 1 or 2 or something like that. So it's
It'd
like a really low
2,
number.
Yeah,
So
2
it's like,
for sure because of 2016.
yeah, so it's like that's ridiculous, dude. Like these guys need to be a part of some stuff. Otherwise, you're gonna have you. I don't know. Like part of me wants to think that TJ Watt wouldn't get like to be like the disgruntled type, and he's gonna be like loyal to being a Steeler, like loves being a Steeler. But like at some point, like if you're not winning, like sucks, you know. And I think to keep someone like George Pickens happy is like you got to be winning, and obviously getting him involved. And I think he brings a lot of value to your offense. I don't know. Yeah, I think that they need to start winning sooner rather than later, obviously, because I think obviously the fan base is at a boiling point still, even though this kind of relieves some tension for now, but the fan base is definitely calling for Tomlin next if this doesn't get righted.
Well, I'd like to see Kenny Pickett potentially deployed in different ways now that Canada's gone. I definitely think the way he's been playing is out of his skills, not necessarily out of his skill set, but out of his comfort. Um, I guess I'm not completely aware on how, like, obviously I don't watch every Steelers game as much in depth as Jonathan, but from like watching him in college at Pitt, he was pretty elusive. And from what I've watched, I feel like they should trying to play like Jared Goff's really good in play action. I guess Jonathan, I don't know how good Kenny Pickett's been play action wise. Um, but I know you said that generally like on like second down they run all the time with Najee, super predictable, which is why he showed his frustration. So I guess hopefully this will maybe open it up. I think that's probably what you and every Steelers fan is hoping for, is kind of more of an open playbook. Maybe is just because, like you said, it from what it looks like, it's so bland, and maybe that's obviously the reason George Pickens has regressed as well. Would be the assumption.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I think play action stuff is something they've been wanting to run. It's just you can't when you don't have a running game. Like for the most part, like I get that Jalen Warren went off, but it's like yeah, they haven't really utilized Jalen Warren as much as they could, which just runs Najee into the ground. But yeah, it's kind of hard to have an effective play action pass attack if you're not running the ball effectively consistently. I don't know. I'm not convinced that the playbook opens up. Like I could, because I think here's the thing: is like the Steelers' game plan to winning is not turning the ball over, right, on offense. But the problem is you're not staying on the field long enough for that game plan to matter because your defense is gassed the entire game, basically. So I don't know. I'm a little interested to see. I hope that they open up a playbook for Kenny and just let Kenny sling it, because I want to see what we have in Kenny. I don't know if I know he was like he could be elusive in college. I don't know if that will translate. I don't know how much that translates to the NFL with guys just being faster. Like, don't get me wrong, Kenny's not slow. Kenny can make plays with his feet, but I don't know how consistently you want Kenny doing that when he's a guy that already has like 2 concussions under his belt and then I don't know, got poked in the eye.
That's the same. That's the same with how like the Chargers use Justin Herbert. He has the elusiveness, but doesn't necessarily.
Yeah.
It's
One name though that would be interesting going into next year for offensive coordinator, even though they're probably likely going to promote within, even though I really hope that they look outside. Maybe this is a sign to change. The whole Canada, they're ready to change. A guy that'd be an interesting person to bring in as offensive coordinator, not necessarily my top pick, but someone that would be I could get behind pretty easily and I'd be really intrigued is Mark Whipple, who was the offensive coordinator for Kenny in his last season at Pitt, and is a former offensive assistant coach for the Steelers while with Ben Roethlisberger. So he'd be an interesting name to maybe come in and take over play calling duties because he had a lot of success with Kenny during Kenny's senior year.
Yeah, I don't know how much Pickett, to your point, I was kind of watching Josh Dobbs the other night, to a little bit of a comparison. Maybe Pickett does the same thing, but if that outside pressure comes in off the edge, like Josh Dobbs had no idea what to do. He couldn't he couldn't move in the pocket and keep his, eyes down the field kind of thing. I mean, that's really, that's like top level quarterback play. And I don't know that Kenny has that, or, maybe he needs more time to develop that. But if you're really gonna, I guess, take off the training wheels for the quarterback or open up your playbook, which you said they probably won't, and I tend to agree with you because they don't want to turn the ball over. And I think Dobbs like dropped the ball, fumbled it, threw interceptions, things like that when the defense really could peel back and rush them. And I feel like the same thing might happen with Pickett, kind of the way he plays. So I agree with you completely on that.
Yeah, I mean, he has the tendency, which is like this is something that's been so apparent all year. Is like he when he rolls out of the pocket to like escape, he usually rolls into a sack. Like he always rolls to, like the wrong side of where the pressure is. So yeah, I think Pickett he struggles to identify pressure, struggles to identify coverage. Obviously, if we want to talk about the Browns game, I think one of the reasons I was so frustrated. I get that it's the Browns defense and they're a great defense, but I mean, I get that Canada is to blame for this partially because he didn't make adjustments, but at the same time, as a quarterback, like Kenny does have freedom to call audibles and stuff like that in the offense. Like that's been made known. So the fact that he's not able as a quarterback to adjust to zone coverage when he expected man is like it's a little concerning. Or like you look at like those passes on like the last drive where they're all incomplete to Deontay, and it's just like, what are you doing, dude? Like he struggles to make elementary reads, and like you can see that with like listen, like Ben Roethlisberger will live stream the games and talk about it, and like you hear Ben just break down the plays. And I get Ben's a Hall of Famer, so you don't necessarily need that level, but Ben's someone that has good football IQ to be like, all right, this is what they're doing, and then it's like Kenny doesn't see those type of things. Like the game is just too fast for him, and I don't think that this gets better, but I think now you have a reason to be like, it's not Matt Canada. It's Matt Canada, but it's also not him. It's also Kenny just isn't the guy. But yeah, I don't know who you go to if it's not Kenny next year. I know. Do you sign Kirk Cousins? Like, do you trade for someone? Do you trade for Justin Fields? Do you trade for Kyler? I don't know. I don't know if any of those guys are the guys to get you over the hump, but it sucks. Yeah. I don't know if they have a quarterback yet, but I guess we have 7 games to find out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they got a
I mean,
nice schedule down the stretch too. I mean, you could easily win 4 or 5 games that, to your point, and I guess in our conversations during the week, if they don't, I mean, that's a big problem. But like you also mentioned, you got, Minka, TJ Watt, and Cam Hayward. They haven't really all been on the field at the same time this year. And, you're still sitting at 6-4 despite all the problems on the offense. I know there's a factor of luck or being fortunate in some of those games, but you're still 6-4, and you could still make something out of the season, no doubt, especially with a lot of the injuries in the AFC and Kansas City being a question mark. I mean, and Pittsburgh beat Baltimore. So, I mean, everybody's talking about them being, a step above everybody else, but there's no reason that can't flip before the end of the year.
Oh yeah. I mean, if Pittsburgh wins out and that means they beat Baltimore one more time and say Cleveland loses once more, which they probably will, then next thing you know, Pittsburgh's won the division. Um, at least second, like because they currently have, yeah, like you said, they beat Baltimore already. So yeah, we'll see. I feel better about their schedule now that Canada's out. If dude Canada's in, I don't see how you get more than like 3 wins out of that. Just because yeah, just the way he had been coaching and the offense. But to your point, yeah, they haven't had Minka, Cam, and TJ really be on the field together, which is huge. I think my biggest concern for them going forward is the middle linebacker depth, because I think you even without Cam, even without Minka for like times this season, like Quan Alexander, Cole Holcomb, those guys were balling out, and to lose both of them in consecutive weeks for the season. Orlando Roberts played very good last week. I don't know how long that can hold up. He is a guy that I believe he's like 30. He's not known for being like a great like pass defender. He's definitely like the thumper. of the group. So I don't know. That's my biggest concern going forward when you start facing guys like Kyler, when you face Lamar again, even Gardner Minshew, Geno Smith. Like, I mean, you saw like Jordan Love kind of move the ball at times pretty easily down the field against them, and you saw DTR obviously in that last drive move the ball pretty easily as well, with the only incompletion he had being a spiked ball. So that's my biggest concern going forward is like you have an offense that can't stay on the field, so it wears out your defense. You have a middle of like the defense that's super thin, so now you're gonna get picked apart. I don't know. I think that's the biggest thing is, yeah, obviously, hopefully this change helps the offense at least stay on the field. Even if they don't end up scoring many more points, hopefully they can just stay on the field longer and burn some more clock for their defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way you're really going to find out is the last 7 games. Honestly, that'll be the driving factor, I'd say. Do you feel better now, Jonathan, to get that out?
Oh, dude, I'm so happy that they fired. I can't believe witnessing history, man. First time, like basically ever, that they've done this. Thought for sure they were going to pay him. I was worried about an extension. Now I know that that was all just smoke screen stuff, man. And Tomlin was ready to get rid of him.
Well, I hope the best for you. I hated seeing you at your low yesterday. I believe it was yesterday or 2 days ago. That was tough to hear. But I'd be remiss not to move on to potentially the biggest game of the week. Obviously, there's the NFL games. Um, but even if you're not a college football guy, the best rivalry in college football is this week. Obviously, rivalry, so all the rivalries are really this week. But the game, it has the name the game for a reason. It's the creme de la creme, Michigan, Ohio State. So I think just a little touch on this. Obviously, all of us prefer the NFL. Um, but Steve, the Michigan guy here, I kind of just want to hear just some tidbits on it. Obviously, we don't have to mention this sign stealing thing. Let's just focus on the beauty of this rivalry.
Well, I mean, I do think it's relevant. I think Ohio State would typically be hungrier after, Michigan pretty much taking care of business the last 2 years. But I think with everything out there, I think Michigan's actually going to be a little bit hungrier with all that going on, and plus the games at the big house. I think not having Jim on the sideline will be a problem, though. I don't think it has anything to do with what's gone on the last 2 games. If you guys remember last year, Michigan played Illinois, and Jake Moody had to make a field goal right at the end of the game to win 19-17, I believe the score was. And everybody's like, oh, Michigan, or, Ohio State's going to beat them, blah, blah, blah. And, Michigan took care of business, one Donovan Edwards big play after another, and Cornelius Johnson streaking down the sideline. And I think this game's gonna go, kind of the same way. The big stars, I guess the biggest star of the game would be Marvin Harrison Jr. If Michigan can kind of find a way to contain him, I think this is Michigan's game all day. I might have a few more comments, but that's kind of off the top of my head, the way I see things going. I think the top level guys are for Ohio State, but depth and kind of every, offense, defense, special teams, I think Michigan has them pretty much everywhere. If Jim was on the sideline, I think this would be a 2 touchdown game. I think, Michigan kind of, they let their foot off the gas against Maryland, and they're already looking forward to the Ohio State game. And I think that's why that game ended up as close as it did, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I definitely think with Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka, the great thing about Michigan is they have with Ohio State having one of the best wide receiver duos in college football. Michigan has one of the best cornerback duos in all of college football, arguably, with Mike Still and Will Johnson. Still has like 5 picks on the year, and Will Johnson's only allowed a hand. Everybody talks about Will Johnson's pedestrian stats. In my opinion, with how Michigan runs their defense, that shows how often he's been targeted or allowed catches. I mean, he's barely allowed to catch it all year. Every time you don't hear his name, and that's really good for a cornerback. It's generally what they'll say. They have like a 9-man front play in the front four. They rotate them constantly. So that's like we mentioned their depth, and then their two-headed monster at running back. I just think it's limiting the mistakes for Michigan if they like they did against Penn State, not making a mistake. Which they just ran the ball a ton. I think if they stick with that, continue just to do their brand of football, they've won the Moore Award 2 years in a row for best offensive line. I think if they stick with that and pass when needed, I think that's when McCarthy's at his best. So I do see the game kind of ending how it did last year. I think Ohio State's run defense especially has been kind of weak. It showed against Rutgers where they had a close game until like the final 5-6 minutes, and then against Notre Dame, they had Andreas Steen run for a lot of yards on him. So I think those will be the big X factors in seeing how this game ends. But I do think it'll end Michigan's way, pretty similarly to how it has the past 2 years.
Yeah, I had one more point there. A couple guys to look for on Michigan's defensive line. If you haven't, I've watched a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but you talk about guys like Jalen Carter and guys like that in the line, but look at Chris Jenkins and Kenneth Grant. They're just absolute beasts on the defensive line. So you're going to have some tackles for loss, some big plays, big hustle plays, things like that, and those are going to be guys you're looking at on Sunday in the future. So. Just a couple names to kind of put in your memory bank as you watch the game.
I know, Jonathan. Obviously for you, you'd probably be an outsider looking in on this game. Just to, I don't know if you really tune in. I'm sure it's not really your cup of tea. But I mean, at least I want to hear a prediction out of you.
Oh, I think Michigan wins this. I think Ohio State made the mistake of pissing them off. Now that they're going to be without their head coach, like, dude, Michigan's pissed. To Steve's point, like, Michigan's hungry and pissed. Like, they win this game. I think they win the national championship after this, man. And I don't care if Feinbaum won't acknowledge them. They're going to be national champs.
Old and bald.
I'll steer away from the dinosaur for this episode. Yeah, I do think, especially with the supposed like Ohio State was the one who brought this up and hired a private investigator, all that jazz. I can't wait to see the day where Ryan Day has a stupid look on his face when he doesn't know what to do after giving up a 60-yard touchdown. I think if he loses this game, he's on the hot seat because honestly, your whole season, if you're Michigan and Ohio State's head coach, is about the last game of the season and whether you can win that or not. Because like Brady Hoke never won it. Obviously, he ended up mediocre in the end for Michigan, but this game is really the deciding factor. Like Urban Meyer dominated Michigan. If he didn't have an issue, I think he'd be a Saban type coach. Where this guy, he's just a beast. But with Harbaugh back next game too, I agree with Jonathan. I think this would be the year, if any year, for Michigan to win it. Georgia's looked pedestrian at times, but also look like the best team in college football at times. So any last points on this game? Obviously, we'll probably cover it next week after it occurs a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think we hit everything there. I think all the intangibles are kind of in Michigan's way, other than Harbaugh being on the sideline. So, if there's anything questionable, if they're conservative, if they're not making some of those adjustments, or you've seen Michigan run some trick plays and whatnot from time to time. I know in the discussions during the week, they're saying that fourth down and trick plays and things like that are things Harbaugh is very tuned in on and has input on. So be interested to see those situations.
Yeah, it'll be great to see. So, with that, after this, we will get to our daily weekly picks, go over Thanksgiving games, Sunday games, and Monday games. So we'll be right back with y'all. And welcome back, y'all. Jonathan just threw a quick fine bomb jab in when I was trying to bring us back in, so that caught me a little off guard. Um, but I'll never reject a fine bomb. So keep them coming, Jonathan. Uh,
Fine bum.
e- exactly. Fine bum the pterodactyl. Um, but anyway, um. I think moving on to our weekly picks, Steve Malone fell down to earth, and that was wonderful to see for Jonathan and I. Um, I won the week at 9-4, then both of you guys at 8-5. Um, Steve still has a 6 game lead on me, and then has an 11 game lead on Jonathan. So there's still a gap, but this is really the week where Jonathan and I make a push. I feel it. Um, in a slate full of games that span from Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Monday because of the Black Friday game this year. Um, so we'll get right in. I mean, the first game of the week, the Lions at home against the Green Bay Packers. Packers have an extensive injury list for this game. So honestly, this is one of the games where I didn't really have to think much on it. One, because they're my team. And number two, I think the Packers are potentially the worst team in the division. I think the Bears might be better than them. So I did pick the Lions, 34 to 24, with two Jameson Williams touchdowns.
I think Eli threw that last one in for his fantasy team, but anyway, no, the Packers, yeah, they got 17 guys on the injury report. Aaron Jones kind of been struggling with injury all year. Luke Musgrave had to go to the hospital. They put him on the IR, I believe, with like an abdomen injury. They had another young guy, I think Dontavian Wicks is in concussion protocol. They got some guys on defense. So um, I think they had some easy matchups with their defense early in the year. And I think now the Lions, to your point, I think the Packers are kind of trending to be, probably the worst team in the North. Part of that due to injury and part of that due to a lot of inexperience on especially the offensive side of the ball. So I agree. I think, whereas last week I think the Bears game was kind of a trap game, and we talked about that. Or yeah, I definitely talked about that potentially being a close game, and that came to fruition. But I don't see that this week. I think the Lions Thanksgiving, St. Brown and the Goff and the boys, maybe Dan Campbell grabbing a turkey leg after the game, and I think they're just going to devour the Packers 31-14.
Yeah, I have the Lions by halftime flying in first class in this game. They're gonna be hopping yeah, this is gonna be an easy game with Jack Harlow performing at halftime. They might as well pull Evan McPherson, just stay on the sideline and watch the performance because this is gonna be in the bag. I have them winning this one 35-10. The Lions are on fire.
I like the Jack Harlow song usages as well. I caught that. So next we have the 4 o'clock slate on Thanksgiving, the Cowboys and the Commanders. Cowboys have been rolling, and the Cowboys have rolled against poor defenses, which the Commanders are one of those. Made Tommy DeVito, the Italian mob boss, look fantastic last week. And I don't think Sam Howell, he won't know what to do against the Dallas defense, who has consistently, they're a very all around defense. Linebackers are really their only weakness, I'd say, because Van Der Esch is out. But I still have the Cowboys winning relatively easily. I would give it to them 27 to 21.
Oh, I think you're being very generous. Some of these Thanksgiving games, the Cowboys have been putting up tons of points, and I think against inferior defenses and opponents this year, they've been in the 30s and 40s repeatedly. So I think Lamb and Pollard and Cooks and all the guy Dak's gonna, to your point, DeVito put up 31. So I'm gonna go Cowboys 45-21.
Yeah, the Commanders might as well just change their name to the Commandos because Cowboys are gonna basically be making them look embarrassed like they're naked out there. So yeah, uh, I have Micah Parsons getting a sack and a pick in this one. We're gonna do Cowboys 42-14.
And then the last game of that Thanksgiving slate, we have the Seahawks and the Niners. It's an interesting one to end the Thanksgiving night. No Kenneth Walker, from what I've been hearing. So that'll be tough on the Seahawks. We'll see how Charbonnet holds up, but it's a tough defensive matchup for him. And I think what I saw of the Seahawks last week against the Rams, and what the Niners have done recently, Brock Purdy with the perfect passer rating last week. All my faith is in the Niners. I think because it's a divisional matchup, I do think it'll be a little closer. But I do have the Niners winning this one 31-21.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. I think Geno Smith is trending on a super mid level, and I think it's gonna continue. I know he was kind of knocked out of the game. They came back. I guess he couldn't hear what was going on in his helmet, ran a run, it was kind of a little bit of drama at the end of the last game. But to your point, Kenneth Walker out. Charbonnet, I know there's been some confusion when he's been in the backfield. He's kind of made some rookie mistakes and things like that. And when you got the rush of the 49ers coming after you and you have to be in, I think Charbonnet had 85% of the snaps last week. So, Geno's probably going to take some big hits and we'll see if he even makes it through the game. I believe he's questionable trending to play. So good luck against the 49ers. I do believe, like you said, at home, they'll keep it a little bit closer. I'll go San Fran 34-20.
Yeah, I think San Francisco should have no problems with this. Honestly, looking back on our segments about the concerns for the 49ers and how they're playing now, man, oof, yeah, they've definitely put those concerns behind us. And Seahawks looked like at one point in the season that this could be their division. And Steve's point, Geno's trending pretty mid. So I have San Francisco winning this one 31-17.
And next we have the Black Friday game, which would be the Dolphins and the Jets. I highly doubt I'll be tuning into this game at 3 p.m. on Friday, because I've seen Tim Boyle start a game for the Lions. It's ugly. I have the Dolphins winning this one 35-10.
Yeah, I agree. Tim Boyle, I think we talked about earlier, and Kenny's at a much higher level, but Tim Boyle, as soon as there's any pressure, he's taken off to run. He's chucking the ball to who knows who. He'd hit the ceiling if you try to throw it 5 yards across the room here. So it's just going to be ugly. I'm going to go Miami 31-3.
Yeah. Yeah, this is then. Yeah, I don't even know what this game is. This obviously NFL probably thought going into this that it was gonna be Aaron Rodgers versus Tua, but this sucks for fans to have to watch this. Yeah, 35-3, Dolphins.
And next we have the Sunday slate. We have the Saints and the Falcons. This one I really actually didn't think about it too hard. I like the Saints here. The Falcons on defense have been regressing tremendously. We saw that against the Cardinals before their bye last week. And I think if Carr is healthy, they'll Taysom Hill, they'll integrate him more. I think no Michael Thomas will open up A.T. Perry and Rashid Shaheed. So I'll be rolling with the Saints here, 24-17.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I think it was the last game that they weren't using Alvin Kamara as much. They I think it was because Winston was in, but they were getting Olave the ball. So it'll be interesting without Michael Thomas, kind of how that goes. To your point, I think Carr is going to be healthy after the bye week. But I know Atlanta is going back to Desmond Ritter and also made an effort to get Bijan the ball, I think 20 plus times the last game. So I think that's going to keep it close. And the fact that it's in Atlanta, I'm going to go Saints as well, 17-14.
Yeah, Atlanta's done a good job of keeping a lot of their games close, and New Orleans is kind of I don't know. I feel like there's games where they should have been winning that they haven't this year, so I'm kind of hard pressed to pick them. I like Atlanta at home, really for the reasons Steve said. I like the fact that they're starting to feed Bijan more. Doesn't matter at this point for my fantasy team whether or not they do that, so whatever. But I think that's good for their offense. Yeah, Ritter can make plays with his feet. I like them at home here. I think this is gonna be a really close one. Uh, but yeah, I think that this division should be the Saints, but I think for some reason like Saints haven't been able to run away with it yet, and they're keeping the Falcons and the Buccaneers in it. So I like the Falcons here, 24-21.
Then next we have the Steelers and the Bengals. This one was a really tough one for me. I think there's a point to be made to choose either team. But what it came down to me was the fact that the Bengals have home field advantage. They're playing at home for this game. So I'm leaning towards the Bengals for this game. Especially if Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson are really dialing in. I could see them getting pressure on Kenny Pickett this game. But it's hard. I don't know what they're going to get out of Jake Browning, so it's a shot in the dark. It's a tough game to gauge. I do hope until I see it, I can't really trust the Steelers offense. So I am rolling with the Bengals here. But it's going to be 21-17.
Not sure on that one. The little bit I saw of Jake Browning, there was like no zip at the ball, and the Steelers are, you got Porter Jr., very physical, going to get his hands on the ball, things like that. The passes that Browning was missing on was behind the receivers. Didn't have a lot of zip. I think there's going to be multiple turnovers by the Bengals, and I do think I don't think the philosophy will change too much with the Steelers. It's week one, but they'll do some things, and I think the guys on offense will feel a little bit refreshed and probably have a little extra pep in their step for the Steelers. So I'm going to go Steelers 24-6.
Ooh, Steve, you're making me think about change my pick here. Ugh, man, you really just sold me that they can come in. They can come in there and win this one. I'm gonna still side with Eli for the fact that it is home field advantage for the Bengals, and until the Steelers prove otherwise, like I don't trust their offense whatsoever. I don't trust Kenny under center whatsoever. Um, Bengals, yeah, I think I could see their pass rush really getting to Kenny. Um, I think Steelers defense is going to do their job to Steve's point, but I don't trust the offense to answer until I see otherwise. And I think coming into a hostile environment, Steelers have not performed well on the road this year where it's been a hostile environment. Obviously the Raiders and the Rams games don't count because those are basically home field games for them. Like you've seen them go into Cleveland now. We saw them in Houston, and it's just like it hasn't looked the best for them. So I don't really trust them at this point. Like I'm very optimistic about the future now that Canada's gone, but I think it is still week one. I think there's going to be some rough patches. I think they're going to make progress, but yeah, I need to see Kenny do more. And he hasn't really done that in the last month or so. He's kind of gotten away with only having to do like one good drive in the fourth quarter for them to win games. And it's not sustainable football. And yeah, I need to see more out of him before I start picking them. If this was home, I'd pick Steelers, but yeah, no, I have Bengals winning this one. I think it's going to be a very low scoring game. So I'm going to have them win this one 13-10. So same score as last week.
And then next we have Carolina at Tennessee. This one was a bit tough for me, but I think what I saw out of Carolina last week, they kept it tight in a one-score game until the second half with Dallas. Tennessee has looked abysmal recently. So I'm siding with Carolina here. I think they'll notch their second win. I think they'll make the race for the first overall pick really interesting. I think Bryce Young has flashed a little more recently. And I think the defense has done a little better. So I'm gonna side with Carolina here. I think Bryce Young could have a game in comparison with his game against the Texans. So I have Carolina winning this one 21 to 18.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Will Levis has looked dreadful since that first game. I believe he's banged up now this week. I think you're going to start seeing a shift towards, almost the Tennessee looking towards next year kind of thing. So, Carolina's kind of been doing that already for several weeks, and Reich's kind of coaching for his job, and I think the players are coaching for or playing for next year. So I'm going to go super ugly game, Carolina 14-13.
Yeah. I'm gonna switch my pick here. I had Tennessee going in there. I thought Will Levis could have a rebound game. I like the point Eli made about the Texans game. I don't know. There's something about me where it's like Bryce Young versus a fellow rookie quarterback, where I feel like he's got something to prove that why he was taken number one overall. I mean, he's able to pull out the dub against CJ Stroud, and so he goes against Will Levis. Um, yeah, I like him to pull out the dub this one based on the hearing your guys' points. You guys have persuaded me, so I'm gonna go Carolina here. 17-14.
Then next we have the Buccaneers against the Colts. Another one where I was pretty sold on my pick right away. I haven't been sold on the Colts. Their offense has struggled. They struggled against the Pats their last game. And I think the Bucks flashed. They had a chance to make it one possession pretty late into that Niners game. Mayfield has flashed at times. Their defense concerns me. So Minshew might have a really solid game, but I'm rocking with the Bucks here in a higher scoring game. I'm going to rock with the Bucks 35 to 32.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I don't know if Indy's kind of up and down, and I feel like Tampa's the same way. So, to your point, it's like one week Tampa, they shut down Levis. Next week they play a more complete team. They get blitzed, and I think the week 2 weeks, I guess before that, they got lit up by CJ Stroud. So I feel like it's the up and down. So I feel like it's going to be, up for them again this week against Gardner Minshew. They're going to have a good game on defense and confuse them and that sort of thing. And I think the weapons on Tampa, including Baker, continuing to play well, I think is going to play out. I think it'll be 24-23 Tampa, close game.
Yeah, I also like Tampa in this. I like the way White is trending at running back. I think he'll prove crucial in this game. I like how Baker's played at times this year. I think he's definitely earned another starting job in this league. Um, yeah, I like Tampa in this one as well. I have them winning this one 28-27 because I feel like the Colts tend to keep things pretty close for the most part.
And then next we have the clunker of the week. We have the Patriots at the Giants. Um, I wasn't really sure where to go with this one. I'm unsure who's starting at quarterback for the Patriots, and for that reason, I'm rocking with the Italian mob boss, Tommy DeVito. I'm rocking. I hope he has a second game in a row. It's kind of fun. People completely doubted this guy, and he balled out, which was awesome to see. So I'm rocking with the Giants here, and it'll be 18-10. I don't trust Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones or anybody on that Patriots team.
Yeah, I think the Patriots will have a little more on defense than the Commanders. Commanders are just bad on defense, especially giving up their two defensive ends there. So um, I don't know how much stock I could. I'm not sold on DeVito yet. If he does it this week, maybe there's something there. But I gotta go Patriots 17-13. I guess they'll have the run game, and maybe they'll get a spark from Zappy. So 17-13 Patriots.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Danny DeVito's son in this game. New York Giants are gonna win this one at home. I have them winning this one 23-12.
Then next we have an awesome matchup. We have Jacksonville at Houston. This should be an electric matchup, and I foresee this one being quite high scoring after seeing Jacksonville's offense be revitalized last week. Lawrence finally breaking out. And then Stroud being Stroud, he struggled in the second half. It looked like he got a little banged up, but he should be recovered. Um, I'm leaning towards the Jags and how dominant they were. So I will be picking the Jaguars in this game, 38-35 on a last second field goal.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a little more experience as well with the Jag squad. Um, yeah, I think in the end, they've got a little bit more on their team, a little bit more talent, a little bit more experience. Um, I think, Stroud will end up making some mistakes, but yeah, I mean Houston's definitely a lot of fun to watch and definitely above everybody's expectations, but I have the Jags as well, 34-31.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Jags here for a lot of the reasons Steve said. Yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence is playing some good ball right now, and he's got a chance to put the Texans even further behind. So I like them on the road here. I think it's going to be actually more of a lower scoring game. So I'm going to go, at least by their standards, 24-21 Jags.
Then next we have an interesting match. We have Cleveland at Denver. I'm convinced I sparked Denver to go on this run ever since I mentioned my hot take of them becoming a playoff team. So I'm going to take full claim in that, and I'm going to be riding that Broncos country. Um, I don't think Dorian Thompson Robinson will have. I think he'll have a similar game to last week. I just think it's the fact that I think Russell Wilson's been running a solid offense. They couldn't finish any drives until the last one last week. But I'm confident the Broncos can put this one away. So I'm going with the Broncos here. And I'm going to go with 27-17.
Yeah, I think the Broncos have shown a real knack for creating turnovers, and multiple turnovers at that. Something I don't the Steelers weren't really able to force completely in that game. So I think they'll get to the quarterback, Patrick Surtain, and some of the other guys on defense will make enough plays to really put pressure on Thompson Robinson. I think Njoku had something like 15 targets last week, so I think they're going to force Thompson Robinson to try to throw the ball down the field, and I think that's going to be a problem. And like you said, I think Russ will do just enough. Cleveland's going to be all over Denver as well. They're not going to let them run. It's going to be difficult to pass. But I think short fields, Denver will take it 17-9.
Yes, Steelers won that game last week with just a competent quarterback. DTR did not look that great at all, obviously, outside from like that last drive. And when you have Russell Wilson under center playing like how he is, I think they're going to find a way to win this one. Not looking favorable for the rest of the Browns season, despite how good their defense is, because I don't really think that if they don't have a quarterback, it's going to be hard to win against teams that have competent quarterbacks and have even solid defenses. So I have the Broncos winning this one 21-13.
Next, we have the Rams at the Cardinals. I liked what I saw of the Rams. I saw a lot of fight at the end. I think a healthy Matthew Stafford. I think he's looked solid this year. Obviously not in his prime anymore, but I think with his weapons that he has this year and Kyron Williams coming back, a young defense led by Aaron Donald, I think the Rams will finally have a comfortable win and put themselves back in the playoff race for that last spot with Minnesota. So I'm gonna have the Rams winning this one 27 to 20.
Yeah, I agree. I think with Williams coming back, they immediately waived and sent Daryl Henderson to their practice squad. So I think that's a huge upgrade in the running back field there. Um, they know all about Kyler Murray, so there's not going to be any big surprises there. So I think that also gives them an advantage. Playing in Arizona, I don't think is a big deal for the Rams. I'm not sure if either team has a great fan base by any means, but I'd say, Rams 27-24.
Yeah, I like the Rams in this one a lot too. A lot of the points that you guys have made, home field advantage in Arizona doesn't really, at least never occurred to me that that's a thing. No offense to the Arizona Cardinals fans. Obviously, there's no such thing as home field advantage in Los Angeles either. So,
Correct.
but yeah, Matthew Stafford can still sling it, albeit not in his prime level, but still with Cup and Nakua, I think they're just going to be just fine. I think Nakua goes off for 150 yards here, and they win this one 35-17.
And then next we have the Chiefs at the Raiders. I had a little harder time than I thought picking this one, solely because I saw a stat that the Chiefs in the second half are the lowest scoring team in the NFL points wise. That proved to be the case again last week. So I'm actually going to go with the Raiders here. I think they will pull it to within one, or well, not within one game, but closer, much closer in that AFC West division. Um, I think Max Crosby will prove to be an issue as usual, and I think Aiden O'Connell. They have to lean on their run game in this situation. I think Aiden O'Connell. He played admirably last week against the Dolphins. But he has to limit his turnovers to win this game. I think he'll do just enough to win it. I do have the Raiders winning this one 28-24.
Yeah, the Chiefs played a really odd game last week. You're used to seeing the quick passes where the guy goes in motion, gets the ball, the rollouts, things like that. It's just a weird game where Justin Watson's getting like 12 targets. It's just an odd game that the Chiefs, I don't know what their game plan was. I don't know what they're doing in the second half. I don't know if Reed's lost his touch, but just some strange stuff going on with the Chiefs this year. Saying all that, they're still one of the top teams in the AFC, and I think they're still building to towards the end of the season. It'll be a tough out for anybody. If not making it all the way, to the end, and eventually, losing to Philly, San Fran, or you name it from the NFC. But yeah, I agree with you. It's going to be a close game. It's a divisional game. The Chiefs aren't blowing anybody out the way they're playing, to your point about the second half. And I still got to go Chiefs, though. 24-20 over the Raiders. Aiden O'Connell, I think they'll make him make some mistakes.
Yeah, if it wasn't Aiden O'Connell behind center, I would probably consider the Raiders more because Eli made a really compelling case. I think Max Crosby does get multiple sacks though. Patrick Mahomes, I don't know. It's just like I feel like I get that there was some drop balls in the Eagles game, which sucks. Like that's always unfortunate. That's not on Patrick Mahomes. But like there's times where I'm kind of at least watching the Eagles game where I was kind of questioning what he was doing. Um, running around and all that stuff. Like it doesn't seem like a lot of the stuff that he makes happen. Obviously, he's like a magician back there, but I feel like a lot of that magic wasn't necessarily there. At least in the Eagles game, I haven't watched a ton of Chiefs games, but going back to week one against the Lions, it looks like some of that stuff wasn't there either. I mean, you even had like the one ball that didn't even make it back to the line of scrimmage that he got grounding for. So I'm not fully sold that like the Chiefs win this one because if Max Crosby can cause havoc, maybe Mahomes makes some mistakes. But at the end of the day, it's still the Chiefs. Like they still hung in there with Philadelphia, who's top like three best teams in the league. I think a couple storylines, maybe something we can talk about at a later episode is this season a product of them being without Bieniemy? Obviously the enemies with the Commanders now. Like, has that affected the Chiefs? But yeah, just some really interesting stuff. Obviously, their wide receiver room hasn't been the greatest, but something else to keep in mind is, do the Chiefs get the bye in the AFC? I think like that's still that's a big competition right now. Obviously, between them, the Ravens, the Dolphins. My guess is right now it'd be the Ravens that get it. And then if Kansas City goes into Baltimore, I don't like their odds there. So yeah, I don't know. It definitely doesn't look like the unbeatable Chiefs teams that we've become accustomed to, but I still have them winning this one, 27-21.
Then next, the last of the 4 o'clock slate, we have the Bills at the Eagles. The Eagles didn't particularly impress me last week, so that played a case. And I also really liked what I saw out of the Bills. I think that was the best Josh Allen has looked all year in that second half of that Jets game, especially against that Jets defense. I thought he played really well. I was really impressed with Josh Allen. I do think the Bills will start to really get on track and catch up with the Dolphins. So I picked the Bills 31-24.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a show between Stefon Diggs and AJ Brown. I don't think either team has an answer for either of those guys. The Eagles are, I believe Bradbury and Slay, they're not quite as good this year, and Diggs is really good. He's been down the last couple weeks, some tough matchups. They've kind of gone towards Kincaid in the running game a little bit more, but I see this as a multiple touchdown game for both guys. I'll throw that out there as a prediction. But I do think the Eagles the Bills don't have enough on defense to slow the Eagles down to that same point. I think Swift will also have a good game, and Devontae Smith as well. But Josh Allen will hang around. 34-24 Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, this is easily the Eagles game if they just brotherly shove the entire game, get a few yards each time. But yeah, no, I agree with Steve on this one. Bills were impressive last week, albeit it's the Jets. The Jets where they were trending downwards. I know that their defense is still pretty solid, but I'm not completely sold on their rebound quite yet. And yeah, you can say the Eagles had a rough game, but like the Chiefs defense is pretty legit too. And much better than the Bills defense, I think. So I do think Philadelphia gets back on track here. I think that this is going to be a high scoring game for sure, but I do think Philadelphia wins this 38-28.
Then next we have the Ravens at the Chargers. This one's a bit tough. I thought Herbert, his stats didn't show how I thought he played a fantastic game last week, and they still lost. He got let down, even by Keenan Allen making very rare errors. But I think the Chargers will pick one up here. I think Herbert's been really good this year. I really don't put much of the blame on him. I think Staley has to go. If they lose this game, I keep saying if they lose this game, Staley has to go. But I do really like, I think Kellen Moore has really opened up Herbert this year. So I think this is a game that Herbert's teammates finally support him all the way through. So I picked the Chargers here, 31-28.
I agree with a lot of that. You got Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, Eckler's gone part of the year. Really, the only bad games Herbert's had this year is when he's had that finger injury he had to manage. He seems to be better off of that, and playing, really well. To your point, I think he's on the money. There was some drops last week, and they could have potentially won that game. Quentin Johnston dropped a potential touchdown. Keenan Allen had a drop. But Chargers are going to Charger, so Brandon Staley is a big part of that. But it's kind of just how the Chargers have been even before Brandon Staley. So I don't want to pin it all on Staley. I'm going to go Baltimore 31-28 in a close game.
Yeah, I'm also going to have it be a 31-28 game. I'm going to use a Tomlinism against the Ravens here, where there's such thing as football justice. I think that the justice is going to be distributed to Justin Herbert. To Eli's credit, he plays good games, and Chargers should be winning more of these games. If it wasn't for certain things, I think he's going to get rewarded for his good play in this game. I'm going to agree with Eli here. I think the Chargers do win this. I know that we just said that there's really no home LA games, but I don't actually think that there's a ton of Baltimore fans out here. Could be wrong. Sorry if there is. Haven't seen as many of them as I've seen like Steelers, or even I saw a Browns fan today, which was disgusting. So I like the Chargers here, 31-28. Yeah, if Baltimore was at home, I'd definitely take them, but I think it'll be an interesting game.
Then last we have the Bears at the Vikings. The Bears played a really good game last week. Fields will field it against the Lions, but I was impressed with what I saw. I thought it was the Bears' most complete game, even though they still lost it. And then the Vikings, Dobbs looked pretty pedestrian at the end of that game. So I'm gonna go with the upset. I'm gonna go with the Bears. I think if Fields plays a similar game to what he did last week, I do think that the Bears will pull this out. He just has to limit the mistakes, and I think the Bears have to play less conservative. So I'm gonna go with the Bears here, 24-17.
I was actually thinking the Bears to start with, but you mentioned Justin Fields a lot there, and that we watch the Vikings games. They throw the four guys at the line, pretending like they're going to rush or cover, and I just think Fields is going to get confused on a lot of that and make some mistakes. Bears defense has looked a lot better, to your point there. I'm going to go Vikings 27-24.
I'm gonna go with Eli here. I like the Bears here. I like the upset. And I just think it's a really Bears thing to keep screwing themselves out of the highest possible draft pick. I know that they still technically have Carolinas, but I just would love to see the Bears just like miss out on Drake May or Caleb Williams and be stuck with Fields. So I'm gonna go Bears here. 21-17.
Lots of different ones there, so maybe this is the week Jonathan and I catch up on Steve. But I'd say with that, happy Thanksgiving, big week for all, big week of sports for us. Another episode of Speak Now, so I'd say speak now, forever hold your peace. Have a great weekend, y'all, and enjoy the great sports weekend.
Happy Thanksgiving. Peace.